Hello, John.
Hello, Oliver.
Today we're going to talk about your recent visit to Limerick. You were at the Catholic Voice conference, and I think Lord Monckton was at it also.
I was at the Catholic Voice conference, which was held in the Savoy Hotel in Limerick on Saturday the 24th of November this year. It's a yearly event, and I've been at them for the past 5 or 6 years, and they've been excellent speakers. It's where you get factual information. That's number one. Now, Viscount Monckton, and his name is actually Christopher Walter Monckton. So Christopher is a Christian name. So he spoke at that, and he spoke very well. He spoke about climate change, but he actually called it climate genocide. And he developed the point very well over half an hour. Experts that have considered this subject with the evidence and with what the Climate Change Brigade insist, especially the Green Party and people of that calibre, he disproved their narrative on many issues, and even if you went along with what they had to say, the difference is actually negligible with the cost that's incurred in trying to meet these targets that this climate change quangos have set out. It's, if you like, the climate change is a policy or something that these people that haven't got a Christian outlook, Catholic or Christian outlook, it's a cause the same as the Animal Protection Brigade. It's a cause to give them something to believe in, even if the evidence is not as perfect as they make out. And Viscount Monckton proved it conclusively that it wasn't so. So I suggest anyone that's fallen for this narrative of the climate change and the expense of it, it'd want to maybe, if they're fit to use the internet, try and look up Viscount Monckton's talk or video at a Catholic conference at the Catholic Voice conference about the climate genocide, he calls it. So that was one item that was very important at that conference. There was other speakers equally good, but it's the climate business that I'm talking about, because Ireland and Malta are going to be fined 13 million because apparently they haven't reached whatever targets that have been arbitrarily set for them. Now, the both countries are about the least industrialised countries in Europe, if not the world. Maybe some third-rate country has no industries, but there's no industries belching smoke out in this country. Right enough, there is cows and fields. So we do hear from the Green Party that they apparently contributed to the
methane.
Really, it's so ridiculous. Don't forget, if anybody ever went to school and heard or even read anything, we had an ice age. Now, I don't know if there was many humans about, but I believe there must have been humans about, because they're probably here for as long as anything is here. But there was an ice age, and when there was no cars or this, that or the other, and it must have been fairly hard for people going about in an ice age. Like ticket to North Pole, and this is what you have for your sort of every day. So we had an ice age, but there was no cars or whatever it is that they're talking about, CO2s. By the way, Christopher Monckton maintained that CO2 helps the trees and all the rest of it. And he also mentioned one other thing, that DDT was banned by the same left-wing brigade, which actually prevented a lot of diseases treating crops in Africa. Nothing wrong with it whatsoever. It was beneficial to the soil and beneficial to protecting people in Africa. At the time when it was being used in Africa, the deaths from whatever it was down to 50,000. Now it's up to millions again because it's been banned, and all sorts of rampant diseases that's occurred in that country because they haven't got electricity. That country's in darkness because of the policies of this climate change brigade.
Okay.
They're actually contributing to the detriment of the human race in some ways, because they think that this is a policy that they can believe in, and it's nonsensical.
Were there any other highlights apart from climate change?
There was in Limerick. It was a town that, as far as I can see, there's nearly as many people from other jurisdictions in Limerick as there is Limerick people. That's all I saw in shops and places that I went into, was people from other countries, not just EU, but Muslim countries and Indian countries and African countries. So much so that there's a Muslim chap going for election for the local elections. He landed here in 2000 with nothing from Bangladesh. He has 2 taxis now and businesses, and in 2004 he became involved with Fianna Fail, helping them with regard to the Muslim population, and I presume getting whatever they might be able to get free, because he came with nothing. So he has 2 taxis now, and he's going, his name was Abul Kalam Azad Talukder. Now, it's a name that I wouldn't be able to make head or tail of, but he's going for election as a Fianna Fail candidate in the local elections next May. And with the support of Mr. Niall Collins Td, Fianna Fail, and another Mr. O'Dea, another Fianna Fail former minister and TD in Limerick, and congratulating him going forward, and that Limerick now is a multicultural city without a boy or leave, and yet this is the city that a writer, a former resident of Limerick, wrote a book called Angela's Ashes about the poverty and the neglect that his family suffered from. And he went to America with his brother, and because he was in the army, he got an education, he was a teacher, and he wrote this book called Angela's Ashes, which was famous, and he was even on the Late Late Show and all the rest of it, and it got wide support, and even a film made out of it because of this neglect. And he, of course, he was anti-Catholic and making out that that the church was not helping them, which it certainly was, but it didn't suit his particular narrative. Now, that book was written about Irish people in Limerick and the degradation. Now it's a multicultural city, and all these people from straight from the EU, from other African, India and all the rest of it. This person was from, I think, Bangaldesh, and so he manages now to have something like in a country that we had to, our own citizens suffered all this poverty not that long ago in our lifetime. So, like, what's going on? It doesn't bear any relation to what people would have experienced and their knowledge of Limerick. And Limerick is a fine city. My mother was from Limerick and I visited many a time, but it's not the city that I remember when I visited with my mother when I was in my 20s. Brought her down and drove her down to it. And she's buried not too far from there, which I would visit her grave and all. So this is what's happening in Limerick. We have Muslims there now, and quite a few of them knocking about. As a matter of fact, there's nothing but restaurants for all sorts of restaurants for Indian and all the rest of it. So that is one problem with Limerick. The other thing, that Black Friday was publicised in the local papers that I happened to read, and I mentioned this before, and it's mentioned like as if it's perfectly normal, it's good for trade. But Black Friday, it seems to me to be an abomination and a kind of an insult to Good Friday, which was a very important day in the Catholic faith and in the Christian faith, because that's the day our divine Saviour was crucified on Calvary for the sins of mankind, and making it possible for us to all to be redeemed. So that's what Good Friday is. So anything to do with the opposite of that is, my way of thinking, the secular age that we live in, and it shouldn't be promoted whatsoever. But our Catholic bishops and priests are silent about these matters. It's up to the laity, the like of myself and others, to voice our opinion about that matter. The other thing is that in Limerick, I recognised that there was information in various papers. There was very little Christian Advent in any of them, except one. There was an article in the Clare Free Paper, and it was the only one that I read by a journalist, and it had a very good business about the desirability of spiritual development of oneself. It was very well written, and it was in the November issue of Clare Free Paper. I just can't think of his name now at the moment, but it was very good, and it was the only one that I read that had that Advent, which is this is the period of Advent for Catholics and Christians, a very important event. We hear about the business for Muslims called Ramadan, and that's well publicised, and great respect for that, but not so much for the so-called Catholics in the country, the way that they're not celebrating and paying attention to Advent and acting accordingly.
Being a Catholic in modern Ireland is like a stigma.
Well, that's because of the anti-Catholic media, and when I say media, I'm talking about the state broadcaster, the news talk and all the rest of it. There's a newscaster on that station that replaced George Hook, which is a so-called doctor. Absolutely disgraceful with the sort of views that one comes out with.
What's her name?
I think, I don't know what's her name, is it Kelly or whatever her name is, she's a doctor anyway.
Okay.
Because I don't listen to it now, so I even don't want to, her name is not in my mind, thanks be to God, because I don't listen to it now whatsoever. It was worth listening to when George Hugh was on it, because he stood for values and had opinions that one could agree with or could understand. He wasn't, and he had this one as a guest on it as well many a time, and would seem to be very nice to her, but she took over from him, and she would be pro-abortion, and though she's a doctor. So that's the sort of narrative that you have on that news talk, so we wouldn't be bothered listening to it. And I wouldn't even, if I was offered an interview on it, I wouldn't appear in it.
Thank you very much, John.
Thank you very much.